There's something that happens to your brain when you're deep enough in the woods at night. All the noise of your life, the phone, the traffic, the people who need things from you, it all goes away. And what's left is something older, something that was always there under all that noise, a quiet alertness, an awareness of the dark at the edges of the firelight. Campers call it getting back to nature. But here's the thing about nature. It was never yours to get back to. You are a visitor in it. And sometimes, the woods already have a resident. A very human one. One who has been watching the light of your fire from the trees since before you set up your tent. These are 3 true stories from people who went into the woods and found out, far too late, that they had company. The footprints. This story was submitted by a man named Chris. He'd been camping since he was 7 years old. His father had taken him, his grandfather before that. 3 generations of men who felt more comfortable in a sleeping bag in the woods than in a hotel. He knew the outdoors the way some people know a childhood home. In late September of 2023, Chris took his 2 best friends, Ben and Darius, on a 3-day camping trip to a state forest in northern Michigan. Remote site, no cell service past the first mile, a 2-hour drive from the nearest town. They'd camped this exact site twice before. It was perfect. The first night was everything camping should be. Fire, food, terrible jokes that only land at midnight. They stayed up until almost 2 a.m. before turning in. Chris was the last to zip his tent. He told me, "I looked out at the trees before I zipped up, the way you do, just that last look at the dark. And I thought, yeah, this is it. This is the thing. I'm happy." He woke up just after dawn. Cold. Good cold. The kind that makes coffee taste better. He unzipped his tent and stepped out. And stopped. The ground around the campsite was damp from overnight dew. And in that damp ground, in a ring around all 3 tents, were footprints. Boot prints. Large, adult, human footprints. A complete loop around the perimeter of their site, not more than 4 feet from where they'd slept. He counted the number of times the circuit had been walked based on the overlap of the prints. At minimum, 5 times. Someone had circled their camp at least 5 times in the night while they slept. Chris woke the others. Ben said animal. Chris showed him the boot tread. Clear, distinct, definitely human. Darius said maybe a ranger doing checks. Chris pointed to where the prints led, not to a trail, not to a road, into the forest, between the trees, in a direction that led nowhere official. And then Darius noticed something else. On the log beside the extinguished fire pit, the log they'd been sitting on the night before, there were 4 burnt ends of cigarettes, lined up neatly, side by side. None of them smoked. Someone had sat at their dead fire after they went to sleep, smoked 4 cigarettes, watched their tents, circled them at least 5 times, and then walked back into the trees, silently enough that 3 adults sleeping less than 12 feet away heard nothing. They broke camp immediately. No breakfast, just packed, shouldered, and walked out in under an hour. Chris filed a report with the State Forest Service when they had a signal again. Rangers investigated. They found the campsite, found the prints still partially visible, and found something Chris's group had missed. Behind a wide pine about 30 yards from their site, a small area of flattened brush where someone had been sitting or crouching for what appeared to be quite a long time, facing the tents. No person was ever identified. The area has since been flagged as a site requiring ranger checks during camping season. Chris told me he still camps, but never without a motion sensor perimeter alarm clipped to his pack. He said, "I've thought about it hundreds of times. What would have happened if we'd stayed a second night? If we'd not found the prints? If we'd just slept?"
The clearing. Darker tones,
more isolated. This story was submitted by a man named Dan. 20 years of hiking, Pacific Crest, Appalachian, parts of the Andes. A man who carried a satellite phone and a fixed blade and had never once had a reason to use either. In October of 2024, he was on a 3-day solo trip in the Cascades, 40 miles east of Seattle, a trail he'd done twice before. Familiar, reliable. On the second day, about 6 miles in, he came across something he had never seen. An unmarked trail branching left off the main route, freshly worn. No markers, no signs, just a narrow path cutting into deep forest. He knew the rule. He'd literally taught it to his kids. Stay on marked trails. He knew it the way he knew his own address. He stepped onto the trail anyway. For 20 minutes, normal forest. Ferns, pines, the sound of water somewhere below. The trail was well worn, deeply rutted, like it was used regularly. By what, he didn't yet know. Then the smell. Sweet, chemical, almost like antifreeze, growing stronger as he moved forward. He came around a bend into a small clearing. Someone had built a camp. Not a hiking camp, a structure. Tarps strung between trees with rope, a table of stacked logs, and on that table, objects. A woman's shoe, a child's backpack, purple with a cartoon character on it, a set of car keys, a Nissan fob, a wallet, open, a driver's license visible, and more, other items that told him unambiguously that these things had belonged to people, and that those people were not here. Dan is calm because he's trained, but the facts speak. He photographed everything without touching it. 2 shots. Then he turned and walked back the way he came. Not ran. Walked. Because he had already spotted movement in his peripheral vision, 50 yards back, something stepping quickly behind a tree, the way a person moves when they don't want to be seen. He walked back to the main trail and kept walking until he reached the trailhead parking lot. 4 hours of trail covered in under 3. He called the county sheriff from his satellite phone. A search team entered the clearing 2 days later. The wallet belonged to a woman from a town 60 miles south, reported missing 3 months prior. The backpack belonged to her 8-year-old daughter. Both remain missing. The person Dan saw step behind the tree was never identified. The case remains open. Dan told me, "I think about what would have happened if I'd walked 10 feet further into that clearing, if I'd been slower, if it had been an hour later and the light had been going. I think about it every single time I walk into the woods." The second fire. Quiet. Almost too quiet. The absence of sound is its own menace. This last story was sent in by a woman named Amy. She was an experienced solo camper, had done it dozens of times, considered it the best kind of solitude. In June of 2024, she set up camp alone at a remote site in the Smoky Mountains. 1 tent, 1 fire, 1 chair. Everything she needed. The first night was peaceful. She read by headlamp, watched the fire die down, turned in around 11, slept well, woke at sunrise feeling rested. She came out of her tent and went to restart the fire for coffee, and stopped. The ashes were warm. Not from her fire. She'd let that die completely before sleeping, the way you always should. These ashes were warm in a different spot, a few feet to the left of her original fire ring, in a spot where she hadn't built a fire. Someone else had, after she went to sleep. She looked around the site and found a second thing she hadn't left, a second chair, placed across the fire from her own. Her chair was facing east. This one faced west, facing hers, as if someone had sat across from where she would have been and watched her empty chair all night. She swept the site for tracks. In the soft earth near the tree line, she found boot prints leading in and out. And one other thing, a single playing card, a joker, face up, placed deliberately on the top of her cooler, which had been inside her tent. Someone had entered her campsite after she fell asleep. moved her cooler outside, built a second fire, sat in a second chair facing where she would have been sitting, left a card on her things, and left without making a sound. Amy packed her tent in 12 minutes and drove out without stopping. She called the park rangers from the highway. They investigated the site, confirmed the second fire and the second chair placement, and told her there had been 2 other reports of similar incidents in that area over the previous camping season. The person was never identified. The ranger Amy spoke to told her, before hanging up, that if she plans to camp solo again, she should use a 2-person tent, so that from the outside, it always looks like there's someone else with you. Amy told me that was the most terrifying piece of advice she'd ever been given, not because it was wrong, but because it was right and practical, and the ranger said it like it was just standard guidance. Not even forest sounds. The absence of nature's ambient noise is the outro's emotional statement. 3 campsites. 3 groups of people who went into the woods to feel free, and discovered that freedom has an edge, and past that edge, something watches. If you camp, bring a perimeter alarm. Use a 2-person tent. Build your fire so it lights the space around you. And if you wake up and something feels wrong, pack up. Don't investigate. Just go. Subscribe, hit the bell, and drop a comment with your own woods story. I've been camping my whole life. I read every single one. Stay on the marked trail.